Hello, welcome to Buzz and Bark Animals. I'm Patricia. And there's some confusion. This is actually the second replacement channel for Buzz and Bark Animals. The first one was deleted. It was Buzz and then that and mark, or that, whatever you call that thing. And then it said Bark Animals, and this one is with and spelled out. I don't think I'm going to get the original channel back. I did try. So I think this is going to be the one going forward. I will upload some of the old videos on here, but there were 109 on the day that it accidentally got deleted, so I don't think I'm going to put 109 videos back on here. However, today I'm not going to be doing Reiki. I'm going to be doing channeling. I'm going to be channeling the animal kingdom. I haven't done that in a while. And I was waking up this morning and I felt a really strong pull to do that. I started working with totem and power animals back in the 1990s. I can't remember how I discovered it. I started actually having experiences with crows, and I think that was around, it might have been 1994, 1995, and then in 1997 I had this crow visit me at work, and I think that's about the time I started working with totem and power animals. Although I knew about them because I was reading Lynn V. Andrews' medicine women books, and I was delving into shamanism at the time, and I had friends that were doing that as well. So the totem animals and power animals was how the whole thing started, and then I started channeling humans and animals, and now I guess I've got whole kingdoms. So we're on anybody watching this is going to know we're at a really interesting time on the planet. There's a lot of changes happening, a lot of shifting. There's an awakening going on, and it's not just with humans. It's with everything. So you'll notice in the plants, in the wild, it's getting really magical for some people, very supernatural. For some people, there has been more people being able to feel the spirits of trees, of plants, of animals, a lot of animal communicators now, ever than before. There seems to be something happening where we're remembering who we are and where our place is on the planet. And so that's the energy that I'm picking up. And then if you stick around at the end, I'll do some light language to send us all off with. I will return either next week or the week after with Reiki again. I just don't feel like doing it today. I'd rather channel, even though channeling takes a lot of energy out of me, and Reiki doesn't. Yeah, my health hasn't been that great either, and I've already talked about that, but of course those were on the videos that have been deleted, so you probably wouldn't even know about it. But I've had a lot of really unusual health conditions, and they're not unusual in the sense of people who are in the spiritual communities, because a lot of people in the spiritual communities have had a lot of chronic diseases, a lot of unexplained nervous system stuff, brain things. Some people have heart problems. So there's a lot of stuff happening outside the spiritual community as well, but usually those are more of your conventional medical conditions that are treated, and respected by the medical industry, whereas the people more in the spiritual communities will get things like chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, Lyme disease, Bartonella, things like that, where their nervous systems are hijacked and they end up going through this dark night of the soul and all these other things. Now, some people could start out with that and then they become spiritual, but they weren't spiritual at the beginning. So we're, again, at a very unusual time on the planet. It seems like all the industries, everything is breaking down. We're becoming closer and closer to nature. At least that's one of the roads that you can travel right now, is the road of the Gaia consciousness, or there's the road of the destruction consciousness, and people decide where they want to be with that. But the ones who are on the destructive one, hopefully it's not as many that are on the Gaia one, because the destructive one is the one that is bringing on the earthquakes and superstorms and everything, because our energy fields have a very powerful effect on the earth, and the earth energy field has a very powerful effect on us because we're all connected. And if you go and you get acupuncture or any kind of energy medicine, you know that there can be blockages. And, the blockages would be in your physical body. I guess this is part of what the animals want to talk about. And so, say you have a block in your heart chakra. Well, that means that you will also have blocks in the other chakras, because your first 3 chakras are below the heart chakra, and then you've got the crown, the third eye, and the throat. Yeah, and you've got 3 above. So there's 7, and if the heart is the one that's in the middle, it's almost like a grand central station of energy. So you could be getting a higher calling, you could be getting these messages from the divine, but it doesn't make it to your heart. And if it doesn't make it to your heart, it's just useless information, right? It's getting stuck in the throat, and then it's causing maybe thyroid. I'm not a medical professional, but it could cause thyroid blockages. It could cause, throat blockages, how you communicate. You may either communicate too loudly and too boldly and too aggressively, or not at all. And because the throat, the third eye, and the crown are now going to be jammed up. So if you had a river and you put a dam on that river, then you're going to get all that water rising on one side of that dam, and then eventually you got to release that dam and let the water through. So with the chakras, if everything's getting stuck in the head, it's getting stuck in the mind, and it's not making it down to the heart. Now, I'm in this one spiritual community, which is Kelly Kolodny's community, the Archangel Raphael community on School. And there was somebody who posted the long journey between the mind and the heart. So if your heart is blocked, or if your crown is blocked, because the crown is, this part, then you're not able to bring down those. People say, I can't hear my higher self, I can't hear God, I can't hear whatever. You probably are hearing it, but if you're not feeling it in your heart, then it's basically useless. It's going to cause, again, you get this dam that's building in these other chakras, and then they become overactive, or they get deadened or numbed, right? So you have to have, the heart has to be open. And then on the other side, if your heart is blocked, then you will have survival issues, right? You may not be able to have relationships, because that would be the second chakra. You may not be able to speak up for yourself or set boundaries with the third chakra, because now those are stuck, and here's the heart, because the heart is the dam on the river. And so what we want to do is we want to open up all of our energy centers. So if the earth has her heart chakra blocked, then what happens is you get more of this earth, the plates of the earth can't release this energy that's building and building and building and building and building. So then you get these super quakes, or the energy goes into the atmosphere, it goes into the air, it goes into the ocean, and then you get these super storms, or it creates the cycles and the patterns of the weather, where it's going to head, and whether it's coming from, the Arctic or wherever it's coming, and then it gets stuck in a holding pattern somewhere. And so then one area of the earth is hit very hard, which is what I feel is happening, or has been happening, with the northeast and the southeast of the U.S. But then in other places, you've got heat trapped. And so you've got this imbalance. Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because the animals are saying that we, as humans, the energies that we're putting out when our bodies are blocked, when our energy centers are blocked, is affecting the earth. So if you take millions of people and they have blockages in their bodies and they become a collective, then that collective is very toxic, it's very negative, and it's very destructive. And then we think that all these things are happening outside of us, but actually they're generating from each of us. And so the way forward really is to find some kind of spiritual practice that works for you. Now, for me, I'm getting into Buddhism now, but I don't agree with everything in Buddhism. Some of it feels really archaic to me, but some of it seems very relevant. And so you could decide which spiritual path you want to be on and transform it. A lot of it needs to be transmuted. A lot of it needs to be upgraded. So you may have any of the spiritual or religious traditions. It may be, Native American. It could be indigenous from some other area. It could be anything that's out there. But all of those things have to shift consciousness as well. Because if you look at a lot of the religions, they're very one-gendered. They're very male or masculine. It doesn't matter which tradition it is. Unless it's Gaia consciousness, it's going to have a very strong patriarchal control over it. And that's what we need to transmute, because it doesn't matter what tradition you're part of or what path you're on if it doesn't honor the feminine, right? It needs to honor the feminine and the masculine. There needs to be the yin and yang. It needs to be in balance. And that's another thing that's happening on the earth right now, is it's totally out of balance. There's this whole issue with gender, and then there's people ignoring their gender, or not ignoring their genders, they're rejecting their genders, right? That's not why we're here. We're not here to reject a gender or to maybe see it as totality and the wholeness of who we are, because we're both masculine and feminine. You can't get rid of any of it, right? You can't disown it and say, well, I don't want to be, I'm a man and I don't want to be part of the patriarchal thing, so I'm not going to be a man anymore, or whatever it is, or I don't want to be the wounded feminine, or, whatever. But anytime, I don't know where the gender stuff's coming up, except that in the animal kingdom, there is more of a balance between the masculine and feminine. So humans need to balance that masculine and feminine and become holistic within it. And maybe not identify with any of it, right? Not identify with the masculine or the feminine, but blend it. And that will be like the healthiest way forward. I'm not sure why they're bringing that up, but that's what's coming up. I'm going to do the therapeutic bowl just for a sec. Okay, they're saying that we're negating our humanity. Some humans are doing it because they feel really guilty. And they feel guilty for what's been happening on the earth. Some are doing it because they just want to transcend without actually going through the transcendent process. Some are looking, basically for shortcuts to leave the physical body. There is a lot of shame and different things that have been focused toward or targeted on the human body, and that shame is becoming huge, right? It's been passed down from generation to generation for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And the shame is not just superficial. It's not just like how somebody looks, like, are you overweight or are you underweight or whatever it is, or the skin or whatever it is. People that are born with deformities or disabilities and things like that. There's been just a lot of shame. And I know in my own life, just going back to my early childhood, I had some disabilities, learning disabilities, like in first grade and kindergarten. And there's a lot of shame on that, and I've been releasing that. And you can go your whole life not even realizing how buried inside you there are. Now, animals don't have this. Animals do not body shame. Animals do not judge each other. They don't say, oh, well, that dog is dumb and this one's more intelligent. There is no real, in the sense of, there's competition within the wild and competition with animals as far as, or at least perceived by humans. They're actually saying that they don't have competition. They're not territorial. That is the human projection onto the animal kingdom. Like, if that projection were to be removed, then you would see animals actually getting out of that scarcity where they feel like they have to fight for the food. You see street dogs, fighting for the food that's put on the sidewalk, or see animals in the wild, with this whole scarcity and lack and limitation. That is actually a human construct. That is not in the wild. Although they're saying that what we witness in the animal kingdom is how we perceive and judge that. So if we have no expectation and no judgment, and we were to approach the animal kingdom with a blank mind, complete innocence, like a way that a young child would, we would not see these dramas playing out in the animal world. We would not, but we have, humans are competitive, humans are destructive, humans are a lot of the both good and you know, we can be compassionate, we can be affectionate, we can be all these things, right? So when we're witnessing the forest or the animals, what we witness is our projection, as if there was a movie screen and we're the projector, and there's a film of beliefs and patterns that are going through our mind and being projected on the screen of the world. So animals do not think the way we think they think, and they don't feel the way, you know, they don't have the same, God, they don't even have the same emotions that we have, even though when we perceive them from our human perspective, we'll say, oh, my animal's compassionate, my animal's empathetic. They have different, okay, they live in this totally different space. But when they interact with us, they will act in the way we expect them to act. So you can even look at quantum physics. When something is being observed, it will act a certain way, you know, the energy or whatever, the atoms, I can't remember what it was. But when it was being witnessed, when it was being observed, it would respond in a certain way. But when it wasn't being observed, like, I don't know how they know this, but when it wasn't being observed, it would not act in the same way. So animals are much more than we think they are, you know, and I'm mainly getting a giraffe and a snow leopard coming through here. And so the giraffe can see a long ways, right? A giraffe has this super long neck and these really big eyes, and they're, I don't know, in totem animals, whatever, they're kind of known as being nearsighted, or maybe it's farsighted. I can't remember which it is. But they have this ability to see a bigger picture. They have an ability to see further than we can because of their height, right? And because of the placement of their head and the way that they see the world. Because they don't see the world horizontally, they see it vertically. And so their perception of the world is so far out that even if we witness and observe, we still do not understand, like, what this giraffe's world is. And I bet you if you went online and you looked up research on giraffes, it would be really strange, because there'll be a lot of scientists saying, we really don't know much about the giraffe. And it's because of the perspective. We're not tall like they are, right? We don't have the angles and the perspectives that they have. And then, of course, their bodies are very awkward. The way that they move is very awkward, at least the way we can perceive it. But for them, it's perfect, is all that they know. And then the snow leopard is a creature that stays hidden. So if you were in, I guess it's the Himalayas, and not at a zoo, but if you're in the wild, right? Because you can go to a zoo and you can see a snow leopard because it's in a cage, right? It can't go anywhere. But in the wild, you're probably not going to see one. And if you do, it's still going to be very mysterious because they work their energy from behind the scenes. And they're actually so gorgeous too, you know. But they know how to blend in, and also the fox knows how to blend in. And there's all these animals that know how to camouflage. They know how to blend in, and they know how to observe. So from the snow leopard's point of view, they're observers. They know human behavior, right? They know, you know, because of the people that they have, not a lot of people, not huge crowds of people, but there are people in the Himalayas, right? There are people that live in the Himalayas, especially, you know, Nepal and Tibet and all these other places. So they have observed from afar, you know, they watch and they learn, and they're very wise. And the other animal you can think of is the lynx. The lynx is also an animal that doesn't want to be seen and is observing. So there's a lot of creatures that are just observing us, but we can't even see them. They're blended in to the environment, and their perception of us is also based on their own projections. So all the animals have projections of humans, and humans have projections of animals. And it doesn't matter how much science we apply to it. It's not an answer. The answer is not in science, it's in metaphysics. And it's actually in quantum physics. So the shift that's happening is about, okay, so this year and next year and going for the next 5 years, our perceptions are going to change dramatically. And it's not going to be because of science. It's going to be because of our own experiences, and then we're going to be vulnerable and we're going to share our experiences with others, because normally when you have like a supernatural experience or something out of the ordinary, you don't want to share it with anybody because they'll think you're completely insane. But now people are going to be more willing to do that. They're going to be more willing to just come out of the closet and just say, hey, I'm having these experiences. And then other people are going to have those same experiences, and then they're going to start talking with each other. They're going to start communicating. And then that is going to change how we perceive the wilderness and how we perceive even our pets. Because animals are not acting the ways that they're acting odd, right? You've got, these scientists trying to figure out if dogs know, what human words mean, and if they can actually have these cognitive experiences with language. And animals are actually telepathic. So whatever we're saying in words, it's not what they're getting. What they're getting is feelings, sensations, visuals. Because when you say the color red, you're thinking subconsciously, at least subconsciously, you've got the color red in your vision, right? And and some people say that they don't do that, but I don't believe them. They may not be consciously aware that they're doing it. So if somebody says yellow flower, immediately they're thinking of a yellow flower as they're saying yellow flower, and that yellow flower is now being transmitted to the mind. So with animals, if you're using whatever language you use, it doesn't matter if it's French or English or German or whatever it is, when you're using that language, you're visualizing the word that you're saying. So if it's food, then you're visualizing food. If you're going to feed them, you've got this whole montage going on in your head of everything you're going to do before you do it, right? So if you're thinking, I'm going to go feed my dog, your thoughts are visual. And there's also different electrical energies that are going off in your body language. There's all these other things, and that's what the dog is picking up. So then you go, oh, my dog is psychic. So my dog's already at the dog bowl, and I haven't even said anything out loud yet. Well, you don't need to say anything out loud yet because you thought it. You had the thought. And when you think it and you have the thought, even if you're not consciously aware of it, they're picking up that energy, and that energy is being translated into a way that they understand it. So if you're picturing taking your dog for a walk and you're still like laying on the couch and your dog comes over with the leash, that's because you just transmitted that you're going to take the dog for a walk. And so that's how telepathy works, right? And you could be somewhere else. So you could be like, I would be walking home. I'd be way over, like maybe a mile away, and I'm walking back to the house, and there's a dog that I'm going to take for a walk, right? And I'm thinking, oh, I got to take the dog for a walk. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I'm thinking, I got to feed the dog. So I'm having these thoughts, and by the time I get back to the house, this dog is ready to go for a walk, right? This dog is all excited, and it's been excited for the whole time that I'm walking, visualizing this, right? And I'm nowhere near this dog. And there have been experiments on this with the morphogenetic fields. What's his name? Is it Rudolph Sheldrake? I can't remember his name. I think it's Sheldrake. He did experiments where people actually kept track of when they came home from work and when their dogs would be waiting for them, or their cats, or whatever animal it was. And they had I don't remember how many people were in the study, but he did a whole book on it. And he was trying to find out I think he looked only a little bit at telepathy. He was mainly trying to figure out, was it the time of day? Was it the smells in the air? How did they know exactly when this person was going to come through the door? And why did they know 30 minutes ahead of time that person was already leaving? And then if that person wasn't leaving 30 minutes like they normally would, say they're delayed or something, then the animal would not start reacting until that person's actually heading back home. So how do they know this, right? And a lot of animal communicators will tell you, well, it's telepathy, right? And we don't just use this with animals. We use this with the earth. We use this with other people. So that's why they say, clean up your thoughts, become aware of your thoughts, because your thoughts are transmitting whether you say them out loud or not. So if you're on a bus and you're just thinking horrible thoughts, and you've got 10 people on the bus all thinking horrible thoughts, well, everybody's going to get off that bus feeling really depressed. Even if one person got on the bus and they just got a raise and everything was great in their life and they don't know why they're feeling depressed, well, they were just on a bus with everybody going on with these negative thoughts in their head and they didn't have to say anything. So this is where we're at right now. And this is why all this mindfulness is really important, because, and I'm doing mindfulness and I'm realizing how destructive my thoughts are, right? And it's not very pretty. It's like, oh, I can't believe I'm thinking this, right? Because we don't even know what we're thinking if we're running around and, and then our thoughts are just scattered. And then people will say, my dog is anxious. My cat's just acting crazy. I don't know why. And it's like, because they're picking up on that train wreck in your head, right? They're picking up on all your worries from work and all the future stuff, and then you're turning on the news and now you're freaking out over that, and then your neighbor calls and they complain about something, and so all this stuff is like piling up, right? And it's this energy field that just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So now, like, the neighbor's dog up the hill is like upset, right? Because they're picking up on all this energy. And their family might be really happy eating dinner, and they're like, well, I don't know where that emotional bomb's coming from, but it's coming right up the street and it's aimed at me. So this is why we have to become more mindful, and and I'm working on that, and it's really hard to meditate, actually. So I resisted it for years, and I did a silent retreat once, and I thought I was going to die, because it was just, everyone was sitting there all nice, cross-legged, and very serene look on their face, and I was just going completely insane because I could not quiet my mind, and it turns out neither could they, right? They were just focusing on their breath, and then they knew how to not chase away thoughts, but they knew how to acknowledge thoughts and to move on and to keep focusing on their breath and focusing on the chant or whatever it was that we were doing. But for anyone that's starting to meditate, they may think that everybody else is like, oh, they're all so good at meditating and I really suck, which actually isn't true, because a lot of times they could look really serene with their legs crossed and their perfect posture and everything, but their minds are basically, going over world problems and everything else. So you just don't even know. Okay, so let me see if there's one final message that is coming through. It's coming through me, and I'm talking as if this information is coming from myself, but actually it's being channeled. It's just kind of like I'm channeling all the time. And when I talk to people, I go off on all these different tangents, almost like I have ADD or something, and it drives people crazy. And it's because I've got way too many things coming in, and there's like this one thought coming from one area and another thought coming from another being or whatever, and it can get really, really, that's why I have to do this mindfulness, so that I can also start closing doors in my mind so that not everything is coming in, which is one of the really big challenges if you're an open vessel, and many of us are. So I'm going to do the bowl one more time. Okay, so animals know how to meditate, and they're not... Okay, animals come from the realm of the heart, and they come from the realms of feeling and emotions, and they're very intuitive. So if you were to put either a masculine or a feminine energy to animals, it would be leaning more toward the feminine. And they also have the masculine, because the masculine is what goes out and hunts, or, like the lioness has a lot of masculine energy because she has to go out and get something. She has to feed her family, right? She needs to be the provider. And the provider is the masculine energy, and the feminine energy is to receive. And some animals, you could have a cat that you could say is very zen-like, very mellow, and that cat is going to have more yin energy, right? But if a mouse comes along or something starts running through the house, and all of a sudden that masculine energy in that cat is going to turn on, and that cat is going to go hunting. So, but they have a balancing act that goes on between the masculine and the feminine. But as far as the heart energy, they're not in their heads, right? Humans are in their heads. Humans are needing to get more into the heart. Animals can already do that. Animals have already figured that out. And then in that case, you could say that animals are more awakened than we are. if you had to make a comparison. Although animals don't make that comparison because they don't think in that way. That's a human construct, to be awakened, to be enlightened, all of that. Animals do not have that goal in mind. They want to have a peaceful life. They want things to be calm. They want to have food. They want all their needs met, but they're not focused on being enlightened or awakened or ascended. It's just part of the cycle, right? It's just part of what happens. They don't have any expectations of it. They don't grasp onto it the way that humans are. That's why you don't see animals being religious, or animals also don't need to prove anything. You're not going to find, animals in the realm of science. There'll be objects in, subjects in science, but they're not going to be leading science, because they don't have that kind of curiosity. They don't need to prove anything. They already know who they are, and they know the lay of the land. So they know where they are in the not even a hierarchy. There's no hierarchy. They know where they are in their okay. So they know who the hunters are. They know who the predators are. They know who the prey are. They know where they are in this food chain. They're very much aware of that. And they're also not fearful. So we'll think, oh, look how fearful and anxious that antelope is, because that antelope is being hunted. It looks like that from our human projection. It looks like they're being anxious and fearful, but they're actually not. Although they are trying to hang on to their life because they want to live longer, as any of us would. Okay, so I am going to end with some light language, and I guess I'm thinking these spirit guides that are coming through, the ones that woke me up this morning. And I'm also going to bring in St. Francis of Assisi. And I'm going to do, before I do the light language, I'm going to do two prayers. I'm going to do one from the Christian tradition, and I'm going to do one from the Buddhist tradition. And I'm just going to kind of blend them. And they're both kind of similar, and you might want to reflect on them, and maybe with your animals when you're meditating. The first one is, Dear Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's darkness, light. Where there's sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant not so much I be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, to be pardoned as to pardon, is giving that we receive, is pardoning that we're pardoned, is dying that we're born into eternal life. Amen. That's St. Francis' prayer. And this is the Buddhist metta prayer, and there's different versions of it. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be safe and protected. May you be well. May you be loved and connected. May you be peaceful and happy. So it is. Okay, so I'm going to do the light language. Yechiko parakatuma, sosoko kirko parato, yakechiko parakachikopa, sisakachiko parakanor, arakatatakirko parakatotikiga, arakekikopa, shukotoko parakatuita, arakatatakikirkopa, utukopa, yeketiko parakano wikika. Sounds Japanese. Okay, so remember to like, share, and comment, and help me build this channel, because I'm rebuilding it. This is the phoenix rising out of the ashes, and who knows, this might actually end up being a better channel than the previous one was. Although I do hope that the previous subscribers of the last channel are able to find this one, even by accident, because I have no way of reaching any of them. I don't have email addresses. I don't have newsletters. If I had a newsletter that went to all the subscribers, then I could just send out the newsletter and explain, but I don't have that. So it's just a matter of faith that everything's going to work out. But if you can help in the meantime, that would be great. I also accept donations if you think that these videos deserve them. Other than that, have a wonderful week with you and your pet bonding. Bye for now.